Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we're going to take a look at restoring this vintage 1970s Battlestar Galactica Cylon from Mattel. Now this was very kindly given to me by Steve and Jamie and Charlie at a recent toy fair. They gave it to me because they thought I might be able to do something with it. Now at some point in this Cylon's history someone has painted him blue. Now as you know, Cylon should be this lovely silver colour, but this one really has had a pretty rough life by the look of it. He's been painted an enamel blue all over his hands, all over his body. You can still see there is some chrome just sort of peeking out under the blue. So I'm hoping that with a little bit of work we can get this guy looking sort of half decent. As you can see in the background we have a selection of my other Cylons. All of these are in a pretty rough state as well. Most of them have the chrome worn off, and this guy here also has a bit of red on him. But today we're really going to try and tidy up this guy and see if we can salvage the chrome underneath. It may be that we can't do that, but let's give it a go anyway. Now a few people have suggested that acetone would remove this, and I have to say it would, but it would also remove the chrome underneath. And other people have also suggested that using oven cleaner, which I've shown as well previously on this channel, would work. And again it would, but it would also remove the chrome underneath. And I'm really trying to just get the top layer of paint off without damaging the underneath if I possibly can. So there's been a couple of suggestions of ways I might do this. One is brake fluid, which I have to say I think probably will work, but I want to try some of the other methods that have been sent in. And the main one that people have suggested is to use vegetable oil. So I have here some vegetable oil. This is just sunflower oil. I bought this very cheaply. I think this whole container costs about £1. So I've taken this from our downstairs kitchen. Hopefully Mrs. Toy-polloi won't notice that it is missing. And what I'm going to do is, using this plastic pot, I'm going to dunk this Cylon in some sunflower oil and leave him for a few days. And apparently that should, as people have said, it should make the top layer of paint become sort of a bit sticky and a bit sort of softer, and I should just be able to remove that using hot water. So let's give this a go. I'm going to very carefully, let's pour all of this in here. It looks like I might need some more, so luckily I do have another bottle of this downstairs. I'm just going to very liberally coat this whole Cylon in the sunflower oil, and then we'll leave him for, I'd say, a couple of days, and I'll give it a go and see if the paint will remove. If it doesn't, we'll try something different. So let's see if this works. I left the Cylons soaking in the vegetable oil for 2 days, and after that I took them out and gave them a good wash, because obviously the oil had soaked in and gone inside the figures and they were really greasy and oily, which is what you'd expect. And I have to say nothing had changed. I scrubbed the paint with a toothbrush and also gave it a rub with my fingernail, and it was still just as solid as it was when I put them in the vegetable oil. So this, as I had expected, didn't really work. And here are the two figures that I actually put in the vegetable oil. As you can see, they are exactly the same as when they went in. The only slight difference is they are now a little bit on the oily side, because I've obviously given them a good scrub and used very hot water to get them as clean as I can, but there's still some oil inside them which is sort of leaking out, and you can see they're a bit shiny. But for the moment that's about as good as I'm going to clean them, because I'm going to put them in another solution now and we'll see if that one works. But the vegetable oil suggestion didn't work, which really is what I had expected. So let's move on to brake fluid, which I've used before on spray paint, and that has worked well. So we'll see if that works on this enamel paint. I have my tub again here, and this time I'm actually going to take the figures apart because I don't have quite as much oil as I did with the vegetable oil, and these Cylons are relatively easy to get apart. They're actually they've got sort of pegs inside that hold them across the middle there, but the bottom section is just sort of clipped. So if you just sort of gently bend them a bit, you can unclip the bottom section, and then the legs will pop out like that. And as I say, it's a pretty simple thing to do, and that means I can just drop this guy in the bottom and the legs in the bottom as well, and I don't need quite so much oil. So we'll drop the blue Cylon in here, like so. Make sure it's sort of as flush to the bottom as we can, and I'm going to be using brake fluid. Now this is stuff that I picked up at Halfords, and it's called Dot 4, which apparently is a sort of just standard brake fluid, and this is the stuff I used before for removing spray paint from a Micronaut's head. So I'm hoping this might make a difference. It's one of those things, this is just sort of test at the moment and just testing some ideas, but you know, it's worth a go. This may or may not work. If it doesn't, then we'll move on to something else. So I'm just going to open this up, and we can pour in the brake fluid, and hopefully I have enough to cover this guy. And again, I'm going to leave this for about a day because this is a pretty slow process, and it should, if it does work, sort of loosen the paint, and I'll be able to just scrape that off with a fingernail and a toothbrush. So let's give that one a go and we'll see how well this works. It's now been about an hour and I can already see that the paint is starting to peel. If I show you that hand there, you can see that it's already looking quite sort of flaky on top. So this is really starting to work quite quickly. I think I should be able to show you the Cylon head as well. There you can see it's all sort of starting to come off. So I'm now going to quickly take this out of the brake fluid and give it a bit of a scrub with a toothbrush just to remove any of the sort of loose stuff, and then I'll put it back in and leave it again for about another hour, and hopefully by the end of that all of this blue should be removed, and we will hopefully we'll be left with the chrome underneath, and I'll be able to see what sort of state that is in and whether it's worth saving. After about another hour in the brake fluid, here are the two figures. As you can see here, this is the guy who was painted in the blue enamel paint, and that's actually come out pretty well. Most of the blue has come off. I had to chip a little bit off just using a fingernail or a toothpick just to get into the sort of the fine sort of areas, but as you can see it's all come off now, and the chrome underneath is actually in a fairly tatty state. None of the chrome was damaged by the brake fluid, it's just sort of how it was underneath, and you can see the figure is also quite yellowed. The brake fluid did though take off the silver paint that's used on his gloves and on the top of his boots. You can see that's sort of been removed, but I'm still actually pretty happy with how that's come out. This other guy which I put in just had some red marker pen on him, and actually that's mainly come off as well. It's stained a little bit of the plastic where the chrome had been damaged anyway, but the chrome has stayed as pretty similar to how it was when it went in, but the red has now been removed. There's still a little bit of red staining around here, but I'm not too worried about that. But again, the paint has come off of his gloves. So let's do a little bit of repair work on these and see if we can make them look pretty nice. I think this guy I'm actually going to leave almost as is. I just touch up the paint on his gloves because I do quite like the sort of the rough chrome on that, and it's still got enough chrome on it that it looks alright. But the blue enamel guy, we're going to give a bit of a serious touch-up job. First up, let's deal with the silver paint on his gloves and on his boots, and for that we're going to use just some paint pens. Here you can see I have a Uni Paint silver marker. You can also use the Edding ones. Here's another Edding one that I have, but this should create a similar sort of silver finish that was originally on these gloves and on the boots, and because it's a pen it's fairly easy to sort of apply as well. So you just make sure you shake it up very well, make sure the pen is running nicely, and then we can just carefully colour in all of the boots, and we'll get a finish that looks pretty close to the originals, I would say. The originals were sprayed on, so there's normally a little bit of a blurry edge to them, and obviously with a pen you can get a much sharper finish. But you can see that that does give quite a good result. So I'm just going to quickly paint around all of these boots and on his hands, and then we can move on to having a go at some of the chrome. Now the hands have had time to dry, you can see they actually look pretty good. It's quite a good sort of colour match to the original silver, and we can move on to doing the chrome. And again, with the chrome, I'm going to try using the Molotow liquid chrome pens that I've used previously in other restorations, because I think they give a reasonable result. The only problem with them is that you can't touch them too much once they've been painted, but this figure is only going to be used for display, so I think it should work pretty well. I'm actually not going to do the chrome on this one because I do quite like that. And just by chance, while I was doing doing the paint on the hands of this, I realised that this figure is actually broken apart, which is something I've not seen before on these, but I can actually take this apart. You can see we can remove his legs and his arms, which are actually attached together. And we now have 3 sections for the body, which is going to make it a little bit easier to do the chroming, because I can sort of hold these pieces from inside and chrome them. Shouldn't have to touch the surface too much. So let's go ahead and we'll do some monochrome on that and see how it ends up looking at the end. Now with the liquid chrome pens from Molotow, it's best to really shake them a lot and make sure that it's fully mixed, otherwise the chrome finish is not going to be as good as it could be. So I've given this one a really good shake. Now this is I think this is a 3 or 4 millimeter, no, this is the 5 millimeter tip that I have on this pen, because I'm hoping that there's not a great deal of detail on this back section. I should just be able to use this to chrome it pretty fast, and then we'll move on to the other bits. And as I said, I'm holding it from the inside and I've made sure that the surface is nice and clean. So let's give this a go. I left these pieces to dry overnight because I tend to find with this Molotow chrome that it works better if you leave it for a very long time. You can see that the shine is pretty good. It's got quite a nice chromy finish. If we actually compare that to an original one here, it's quite a good match. But as I say, it's just the fact that you can't really touch this surface too much, because it does dull if you sort of handle it. But it's really good for display purposes. So next thing we're going to do is actually just drop this figure back together, because then I can finish doing the last bits on it. So it's a very simple job to actually get this guy back together, because it's just a couple of pieces that you need to sort of push together. I can drop his arms in, and they sort of bend around a little bit there. We can drop his head in, and then to hold this together I'm just going to put 1 drop of super glue in the main sort of peg hole in the back there. I think that should be enough to just hold it, because I don't really want to sort of glue it permanently in case I ever come back to this figure and want to take it apart again. But I think 1 drop like that, and then I should just be able to squeeze that, and we'll let that super glue go off. Now the last thing I need to do on these Cylons is put the red dot back on the eye. Actually, you can see on this one, which is the blue guy, he still has the red dot there, so that's I'm just going to leave that as is. But this other one, which had red sort of marker pen on him, the little dot has sort of disappeared a bit, so we're just going to put that back. I'm using some Humbrol acrylics, and this is number 238, and a few people have suggested to me the way to do sort of small little dots is just to use a toothpick or you know, a little cocktail stick, which is what I have here, and then you can just dip that in some paint and you get a small amount, as you can see there, of paint on the end of that. And I should then just be able to dot this where the eye is supposed to be, and there you go, we've given him his eye back, so that's all finished. And here we have the finished 2 figures. The one here on the left is the one that had the red marker pen on him. Now I've left this one with the sort of chrome sort of partially worn away, because it doesn't really bother me that this has a little bit of wear, and it's still got quite a nice sort of shine on the front of it. And some of these figures look a little bit better when they're a little bit battered like this. But the guy on the right was the one that had been painted with a sort of blue shiny enamel paint, and as you can see, all of that has been removed, and now the figure looks almost as good as new. In fact, it would be hard to tell that this wasn't an original sort of chromed figure. The finish is pretty nice. If I show you against a normal figure, which has sort of reasonable chrome, you can see that's quite a good match to the original. Even the gloves are quite a good sort of colour match. So there you go. What I thought was sort of an almost impossible task of turning a painted blue Cylon back to an original looking Cylon has actually proved to be fairly straightforward. A few little sort of trip ups on the way. The vegetable oil didn't work, but then brake fluid did. So we managed to clean off the old paint, and a bit of Molotow liquid chrome and some other sort of metallic paint pens, and there we have a Cylon back ready to go in my quite small army. This is a slow build army, this one. So I hope this video has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.